Well, welcome back to Beyond the Sermon, where we take the questions that you submit and we go beyond the sermon with those questions. Last week we talked about Jesus plus nothing equals freedom and how kind of rules all go into there, and talked about some fun things like circumcision, which is always a fun topic to go over, and that kind of has to do with our first question today. So you ready to go, Sean?
Let's do it. Okay. Giddy up.
So, as a parent,
yes,
should you circumcise your son?
Yeah, right out of the gate, just jumping right onto a difficult one there. Lots of fun.
Setting you up for success.
Yeah, I think that there are going to be parents that hold a strong conviction to continuing this tradition, right? And they look at it and they see it in Scripture. This is something that they want to continue on year after year. It becomes a part of something that gets passed down from generation to generation. And I think that people should follow that conviction if that's what they believe and that's what they want to do for their son. And then there's others that have another conviction that they don't want to do that, or they have health concerns or health reasonings or things of that nature, and they should follow those convictions, because what Paul is saying is that their circumcision or non-circumcision does not determine their heaven. It doesn't equate to eternity. And so that's what he's saying, is there should be freedom. There is freedom for a parent to make that decision. You shouldn't feel condemned by the church because you chose to do that or not to do that. And that's the freedom that Paul is getting at, is that we aren't bound by these rules. We aren't under obligation to these rules. He kind of talks about it in this way of being supervised. And one commentator I read talked about the laws of the Old Testament and the laws of Moses are similar to like a babysitter, right? When I get my kids to stay home with a babysitter, the babysitter has authority, right? Yeah. A limited amount of authority, but they have authority, right? Yeah. Don't throw that, don't break that, don't hit them, it's time to go to bed, things like that. They have a scope of authority, but the true authority, and any kid knows this, does not reside on the shoulders of the babysitter, right? Exactly. There's margin for error in that. There's room to roam in that. And the true authority happens when mom and dad walks in the house. Yeah. That's when the true authority walks in. And so this commentator talks about the supervision of the law that Paul talks about, and the freedom that we equate with that is Jesus shows up. The Messiah has come. Mom and dad have come home. Yeah. That's the true authority. And so the law points to the true authority that is in Jesus. And the law also isn't meant to hold us bound. When mom and dad show up, the babysitter no longer gets to tell them what they can and can't eat and when they should go to bed. Why? Because we're home. Yeah. Well, Jesus is here. Jesus is home. And that's the freedom that Paul is trying to bring to these people.
So we're talking about freedom and how these rules that we don't or do follow aren't really attached to our eternity. So thinking in that sense, we can kind of swing the pendulum all the way. Yeah. Why not just get rid of the rules, have a party, and just have no rules at all?
Yeah, and just create chaos, right? Lord of the Flies, let's just go for it, right? And that's not what Paul's saying. He's not saying let's get rid of the law, because the law points to our need for Christ. You and I don't know that we're broken people if we don't have this Old Testament law that points out how ruined we are and how broken we are because of the fall, because of Adam and Eve in the garden, and how that just traces to today. And so the law, when God gives them the law, it points, you need help with this. You will never check every box. You will never measure up. You will not be tall enough to ride this ride, right? You'll never reach that. The only way you're going to get there is with the Messiah. And so when we look at the law, it's not out of legalism and it's not out of checking boxes, but I think we should look at it and say, man, that shows I need Jesus to do this. Yeah. That shows that there is no way to be right with God outside of Christ, because I will never be able to check every box.
Yeah, so we're talking about Jesus, my main man Jesus, and even in the Sermon on the Mount, right, he says, I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And you talked a little bit about that on Sunday, but how does that relate to this idea of freedom and what we're talking about in context with rules and the law?
Yeah, that he came to fulfill it, right? I think it answers this question that you ask of, well, why not just throw it out? Well, Jesus didn't come to throw it out. Yeah. He came to show you he can do it. He fulfilled it. Yeah. He is the epitome of perfection when it comes to righteousness and holiness and being set apart in that way. And he came to fulfill it. And he says, I'm not here to erase it, eradicate it, remove it, but rather to complete it. And so I think that what Jesus would say and what he is saying and what Paul is saying is we aren't meant to just live in this chaos and in this lawlessness and just do whatever you want and that's going to make you feel good. He's saying, no, the law points us towards what holiness can look like. Yeah. It points us towards what righteousness can look like. It points us to the heart of who God is. Right? This is the purity of God when we do this. But you will never get there on your own. Yeah. The only way to experience that purity and be justified to be in right standing with God is with Christ. Right. And that's really hard for us to wrap our brains around. That's a difficult thing.
Yeah, for sure. So if we seem like rules are a good thing, it kind of points out our blind spots and points us to Jesus, right? So why do we emphasize, right? Like, because it can swing the other way, right? Where legalism and checking that box can start to come to our horizons, right? So why should we emphasize rules?
Yeah, it is our natural response that we either move to complete lawlessness or complete legalism in some way. And I think one of the reasons, and we kind of talked about this weekend, was the idea that they're tangible. I can measure that. I can see water baptism. So if I've been water baptized, I can check that box, right? I can see my church attendance, check, or not check, whatever. I can see how often I've read the Bible or how much I've memorized, or I can see my giving report at the end of the year. So there's something about a tangible result that people are drawn to because they can measure that. They can see that. They can latch on to it. It is really hard to latch on to faith.
Yeah.
It's really hard to latch on to the idea that an invisible God fulfilled the law, right? What do you see in that? You can't grab that and touch it and feel it. And it doesn't give you the warm fuzzy because you didn't do it.
Right.
I think the other element of that is there's a semblance of control, right? I can control those things. And it becomes about what I can control. I can't control God's grace and I can't control an invisible God, but I can control what I do. And Tim Keller kind of talks about this idea of control and saying that we will actually tend to use obedience as a way to try to control God. Others go into that lawlessness because they want control of their life. Don't tell me what to do, God, right? That sort of thing. Like, I want to be in control of myself. Well, the flip side of that pendulum is also still control because I'm going to be in control to control my destiny. Yeah. I'm going to control these disciplines or check these boxes on my own and control that so that God will answer my prayer. Yeah. And we gravitate towards that because we are people that want to be God. Yeah. Right? Adam wanted to be like God. Yeah. We want to be like God. So we want to control an uncontrollable universe. Yeah. And so that's either be in control of my decisions and my fate or be in control of my obedience to control my destiny in those ways. It's really quite interesting that in both questions you see that issue of control.
Yeah, that is interesting. So how do you, right, the pendulum swinging to both sides, how do you bring it to the middle? Like, or is there a middle? Is that important? Like, what's some practical ways that we can either not live out of lawlessness or live out of legalism?
Yeah. Tune in next week, because that's what we're talking about. No. It's that idea of it should bring about freedom. Yeah. In either way, there is captivity, right? We become captive to ourselves. We become captive to our control and what we want and ourselves being our God. And that is going to lead to sin, right? And we know that sin leads to captivity. Sin does not lead to life. It leads to more brokenness and more captivity, more addiction, more destruction in our life. So that's going to lead to brokenness and captivity, and so is legalism. Legalism is a cage that holds us because we will never be good enough, and yet we will try so hard to earn the love of the Father. And so I will just continue to try to earn and clean myself up and do the right thing. And so it's finding that balance. I think it just starts with that mentality of freedom, and that's what Paul's saying. You are free, and if you are free, how does tomorrow look different for you?
Stress-free.
It should, right? You're not walking this tightrope of, is this right, is this wrong? And that's what we're going to begin to explore next week, is the idea that freedom leads us towards a spirit-filled life, towards a life of overflowing with the goodness of God and these actions where we're not living in fear, we're not living in insecurity, but we're living in freedom. I am loved, and there's nothing I can do to earn that love. Like, go live free. And I think it has to start with that mentality in order to lead to action that is free.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question? I don't know if it does or not.
Yeah, I think we're just learning to discover freedom in Christ and the hope that brings, and we just hope that you are reminded of that today as you watch this, that you get to experience freedom through Jesus, and that's pretty special. And we just want to thank you for tuning in today, and hopefully God was speaking through us and speaking to you. We hope that you join us next week on Beyond the Sermon.
Don't forget to submit your questions during the message on the online platform or on our website. You can also throw those questions in because we want you to engage in this. This is not just about us talking to each other. This is about engaging with what you're wrestling with as we talk about these big topics. All right. We love you.
Yeah, we do.
We love you, but we love you. There's so much love going all around. Yes.
Lots of freedom too.
Yes.
Good stuff. All right. We'll see you next week, guys.